All right, welcome to a Soccer Pub edition of Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher, about to be joined by Drew Dinsick and Janusz Michallik of ESPN and SiriusXM to talk about the Champions League and then also all of the Premier League action. No need to talk the NBA tonight. No need to talk Nets Sixers. We'll have plenty of time for that kind of stuff. So let's bring in Drew and Janusz and get straight into it. Janusz, thanks so much for joining us. Let's talk straight away about the Champions League. Semi-finals are set. Relative lack of drama in the blockbuster Man City Bayern tie, also in the Madrid-Chelsea tie. The Italian teams providing a bit more drama and excitement, but the odds right now say that this is close to done and that Man City are just going to run away with the Champions League. Do you agree with that, or do you think that one of the three other teams might spring a surprise?
Well, I mean, of course, it's going to be tight, right? The Milan derby is as unpredictable as you can get. I mean, most derbies are, but this one in particular, of course, sort of a little bit of Serie A. Two teams that are a bit pragmatic, two teams that enjoy to play on the break. So, there may be a stalemate there, I suppose, right? So you don't know what's going to happen there because they are in so many ways similar teams in the way they approach the game. Man City, you say to yourself, if not now, when, right? Because finally, I think Pep Guardiola has a team that's capable. But then again, you have to look at Real Madrid and the recent history, what they do, their experience. I mean, on one hand, I look at Manchester City and see Pep that knows his team, doesn't complicate things like he's done in the past, right? You can pick his team, at least in the Champions League for sure now, bar one player. And there are no massive surprises, and that's good because that used to be a thing that we'd say about Pep Guardiola in the Champions League. He's got to plan A, B, and C, which makes a difference with Erling Haaland, and how capable he is, not just scoring in general, but he's got 11, 12 goals now in the Champions League as well, and he's done that, by the way, when he was at Dortmund. So that makes a difference because he can play different ways, But guys, this is Manchester, this is Real Madrid, who's proven already, what I've said before. Not only that, it doesn't really make a difference when and whom they play. They have a difficult road last season, won it at home. This time you may say second leg, I believe is in Manchester, isn't it? I think the second leg will be there. But look, Real Madrid went to Liverpool. We've seen what they've done. They went to Stamford Bridge, no problems whatsoever. So still on the fence a little bit, to be quite honest.
Yeah, there's and I believe you're right. The second leg is in Etihad. Manchester City is interesting to me because in all of the U.S. sports, the idea of seizing this championship, you've got to slay the dragon, and there is no bigger dragon in Champions League for Man City than Real Madrid. Last year's collapse was unbelievable. Do you have an opinion if that has some sort of any mental edge in this one for Real Madrid against a City team that almost certainly will remember that collapse?
No, I to be honest with you, I've thought about it. I've talked about it a little bit. It's quite the opposite. I think, I heard Kevin De Bruyne talking about it, because, on one hand, you can say it gets in your head, right? Last 5 minutes. It's 4-3 at home. You're leading 1-0, and then you're talking, 90th minute to 95th, whatever it was. I can't remember that part. And, Rodrigo scores a couple, I believe, and a penalty, Benzema, and it's over, right? But I would look at it from a standpoint that, Manchester City dominated a lot of those games at home and even at the Bernabeu. They really did. I felt they were most of the time the better team. And you can say, well, if it's not for that 5 minutes, we're already champions of Europe. So I think as a player, I would look. If I were at Manchester City, I would think to myself, hey, it's a great team, but we had them. Let's finish the job right now. So I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's going to be easy, but I wouldn't look at that in a negative way if I were Manchester City.
Yeah, I think Madrid as well, they're playing their best soccer of the season where, earlier in the year when they weren't really competing for La Liga and they're still not, they just didn't seem to have an attacking gear. But the way they played lately, the way they just absolutely battered Chelsea, the way they've battered Cadiz and Valladolid recently in La Liga, it seems like they're firing on all cylinders. So Man City are heavy favourites to go through, but certainly cannot count out Madrid. And certainly, if they're only down a goal late, Madrid, there is an inevitability that begins to seep in about them that they are going to come back. I think everyone on the pitch feels that. There's also an inevitability that feels like it's beginning to seep in the Premier League, where Arsenal have their lead is eroding, and now Man City, this machine that just does not stop scoring goals, they've taken on the identity of Erling Haaland, who's been their standout player, and Arsenal have coughed up 2-goal leads in back-to-back matches, but they do get Southampton this week, which will hopefully be a get-right spot for them. Janusz, what do you make of Arsenal's form at the moment, and do you think they'll turn this around?
Well, I think, times like these always come, right? I mean, this is the business end of the season, to use a cliche. And I think, Arsenal have done a tremendous job. If they win it, it's an unbelievable story because, I remember myself a couple of years ago when they were finishing, I think, 8th those 2 seasons, where I think everybody, including myself, were asking for Mikel Arteta's head. But they were patient. They stayed with it. We see teams around the Premier League and around the world that aren't as patient with their managers. He had a clear idea, and we see it, right? I mean, this is an Arsenal team that we like to watch. I mean, they play good football, even if they don't get results. Obviously, they've lost control, something that, Manchester City does very rarely. I'm sure there's examples. I can think of a game against Spurs and all that. But, if you look at Manchester City, they don't lose control of the game. In fact, the reason I kind of like them now towards the end is because they found a way to play differently too. I mean, look at the Bayern Munich 2 games. They conceded possession on purpose, really, to Bayern Munich. So that plan A, B, and C doesn't have to do just with Erling Haaland, but to me, in the way they play. They can certainly keep the ball 80% of the time, but at times they're very good on the break, as we know it, and they give the ball away sometimes to draw teams out. In terms of Arsenal, look, if they beat Southampton, it's still an advantage, 7 points. I can go towards City and think that they're the favorites in my head, but as a player, I'd like to be in position to be in the first place. I don't care how many games in hand, 7 points. Look, had they had 9, I would have tipped towards Arsenal. I really did. And look, they were a penalty kick away. We're talking about what happened in the game against West Ham. I mean, Saka puts that away, boys, and it's done and dusted. It's 3-1 against West Ham, and we're having a totally different conversation if Arsenal beats Southampton, because then it's 9 points in the game of truth next week.
Yeah, that Hammers result was a shocker. I completely agree with you. It's going to be fascinating to see if City can pull off the Premier League, Champions League double. Only ever happened 5 times. If I put you on the spot, will Man City join the ranks of the great Man United and Liverpool teams of the past?
Look, I'm tilting towards Manchester City. I really am. I know that. I mean, I don't think either team is going to run the table, but ultimately, it's going to be funny because I think the way it stands right now, that Brighton game is going to be the last game of the season, right? Because Manchester City going. So I mean, that's going to be something because that's that one big hope for Arsenal, I think, because if you look at Brighton, the way they're playing right now, I mean, there's a chance. I mean, small, but there's a chance they're going to be fighting for Champions League. For sure for Europe, but who knows? So that's not going to be an easy one for City if it's the last game of the season.
Yep. Speaking of fighting for Europe, Newcastle play Tottenham this weekend. Tottenham absolutely floundering, coughing up a lead, losing at home to Bournemouth in an embarrassing result. Newcastle as well coming off a tough loss against Aston Villa. Newcastle is still decisively favoured in this one. Janusz, what do you make of this matchup?
For me, Spurs are done. They're just done. I mean, and I've said that before. Wow. I mean, obviously the situation, which I'll come a little bit later, but the manner in which you lose at home to Bournemouth. I mean, that's psychologically. I mean, I think before that even because look, I was a big fan and still am, of Antonio Conte. I thought it was deep down, I thought it was a good appointment. I've covered Serie A for 20 some years. We don't have it anymore, but I watch it. I understand Antonio Conte. At least I think I understand him. But what he did and what he said was true, but you still don't do it. He's done, I think, Spurs a massive disservice in doing all that, right? Because that's undermining everything, and it's true. And with every result like that, now we're talking about Antonio Conte. Oh yeah, look what he said. I mean, they're not winners. They don't know how to win, and all of that. And they certainly have a team that should be doing much better. Matter of fact, I still don't. Honestly, I don't know how they're still in the 5th place and in the conversation, to be quite honest with you. But I think this is going to be too much, especially at St. James's Park. So look, even if they do get some sort of result, a draw, I just don't see Spurs in the top 4. Yeah. I do see, however, Newcastle in the top 4.
Yeah, no disagreement here. I think that the summer is going to be fascinating for Tottenham, and how this roster turns over is going to be very, very much worth watching, because I don't know that they're going to be recognizable next season compared to what we've seen from them the last couple of years. Newcastle is an interesting team. Had high hopes that they were going to show up last week, but the villains got the better of them in astonishing fashion, which I think sets up the most interesting match in Premier League this week, which is Bees hosting the villains. And I got to tell you, I wouldn't have guessed late in the season I would care about Brentford versus Aston Villa, but here we are. Do you have a read on how this may break? And do you think in general that the Bees can kind of keep up their outstanding home form?
Well, but Villa's pretty good away from home as well, and Ollie Watkins likes his chances. Seems everywhere now, but he's been scoring away as well. I mean, look, Unai Emery has done a tremendous job coming in. We weren't sure, right? I mean, how that's going to go, especially with what happened with Arsenal. I think he's changed this team. He's made all the right decisions in terms of changing the system from Gerrard's 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, whatever you want. I mean, he's freed up Ollie Watkins, hasn't he? Because he was playing out left most of the time, and now in a 4-4-2, he plays where he feels comfortable. He's repaying that faith for sure. I mean, you look at the midfield that's strong with the leadership of John McGinn, of course. Even with the young Kamara who's out, Douglas Luiz has been absolutely outstanding. But most importantly, I think he. Because Ollie Watkins, we're talking about that, the style of play, but I think what he's done tremendously well is kind of maybe rebuilt the faith of the back 5, I would say, because I don't know if you guys remember under Dean Smith, that first season was outstanding. Emi Martinez, if I remember, was like, what did he have? Like 14, 15 clean sheets. Konza, Mings, I think Target was still there on the left with Villa. He's with Newcastle now, and Matty Cash. I mean, that back 5 was incredible. And then somehow Dean Smith changed that to 3 in the back, and of course paid the price because, he got fired and that back 4 or 5 didn't play well. So I like what Unai Emery has done, rebuild the faith of the, goalkeeper in the back 4, obviously changed the system, changed the role of Ollie Watkins. I think rebuilt Bailey in the process as well to a degree. And Brentford are tough. Yeah, this may be the toughest of them all. But I think here Villa may go from strength to strength, and if not 3 points, at least a point. They're not losing there, I don't think.
Yeah, they've been very impressive, and as an Arsenal fan, it's tough for me to swallow that Unai Emery seems to be doing this good a job with Aston Villa. Never really worked out for Mr. Emery at Arsenal, but good to see him.
Personality,
yeah.
Though. You know what it is. I mean, you know how he is. He's so diligent. I mean, meeting after meeting after meeting. Training is stop and go. And when you come to a massive club like Arsenal, at a position that they were in, sometimes it just doesn't jive. It's not that he's the bad coach, because we all knew how good he was. And then he comes to Villa, and what were they when he came in? 16th, 17th, I can't remember. It's easier to buy into it, because all of a sudden you have a manager that comes in that, okay, maybe didn't work out at Arsenal, but you say to yourself, look at Villarreal, look at Sevilla, look at all the trophies he's won in Europe, right? I mean, reputable manager. And when you're thinking about the drop, you're like a sponge. You almost take anything. So I think what helped him, and I think I've heard Robbie Musto and Robbie Earl talking about it, because Rebecca may have asked him that that month-long break helped, because when you have a manager so hands-on, so detail-oriented, I know a lot of players were missing, but players like Ashley Young who stayed, I remember, the talk around that time that he really enjoyed how he's played. And let's not forget, he's got a Matty Cash out of the starting 11. I know he's injured as well, but it's been kind of in and out. and what's he, 38? So sorry for going on this, but I think the Arsenal end goal may have worked out if he was given a chance. But these sort of managers, so detailed, meetings, stop and go. It's tough sometimes. I've had a coach or two like that.
Yeah, Emery struggled at Arsenal, but you know who else struggled at Arsenal is Mikel Arteta, and he was given long enough to ultimately turn it around. Last one for you, Janusz. It looked like Aston Villa were going to be in a relegation battle, but they're clearly not anymore, and they're pushing for Europe now. But in that relegation battle, seems like Southampton are going to go down most likely, and then after that, you have a cluster of teams in Leicester, Nottingham Forest, Everton, Leeds. I think Bournemouth and West Ham are probably safe now, but they're not 100%. Who ultimately do you think goes down?
Well, the Saints, I don't think are going to save themselves. I'm still not sure about Forest. I've had them from the beginning. They've been up and down. I think the reason that we kind of forgot for a little bit about Forest, because remember there was a time where they had to get their points at home, but now that's even going south right now. So I worry about them. And look, I mean, Leicester, yes, but I mean, I worry about Leeds. I mean, when you lose like this, 5 and 6 at home, I mean, psychologically, I mean, I think you've seen Javi Gracia, his interviews afterwards, right? I mean, a defeated man for sure. Not easy, of course, when he came in. I still worry about Everton. And I tell you what, I have this... I kind of, I love Sean Dyche. I loved him at Burnley, not because the way he plays football necessarily. That's not my style, but I just enjoy, the simplicity of his football. But, just recently, he's gone away from it, right? The game against Manchester United and Fulham. I mean, I thought Sean Dyche was going to come in, organize the team defensively. They're so wide open, unlike Sean Dyche's teams. And he's got a couple of players that he knows, right? Michael Keane's there, Tarkowski's there, Dwight McNeil is there. Maybe he doesn't have the twin tower in Ashley Barnes and Chris Wood, I suppose. That changes the way he plays. But I just think it hasn't gotten better under Sean Dyche. Let's be honest here, results-wise, for the most part, right? A little bit of a bounce. So I worry about both Everton and Leeds. And I still think, looking at Leicester City, I mean, so much talent. How can they be where they are? So sorry that I'm a little bit on the fence there between Leeds, Everton, and Leicester, but it's a touch and go for all of them.
Jay, you know my opinion. If it bleeds, it's Leeds. Take that plus 240, put it in pocket, and we will enjoy their swoon here. 6-1, 5-1 last two results. Oh my goodness, this team is falling apart.
I just hope for our boys, I hope Leeds stay because I'm biased with Aaron and Tyler Adams, obviously, and Weston.
I have a bet on Leeds to be relegated, so I'm biased.
Yeah, it's a more fun Premier League when Leeds are in it, but I fear you might be right, and they may not be in it for much longer. Janusz, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate the time on this one, and we'll post in the links everywhere where to follow you on social media, and as well everything that you're working on with ESPN and SiriusXM. Okay, before we get to our best bets, a reminder to download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. Okay, best Premier League bets of the weekend, Drew. You're running hot after you've tied yourself to the great Crystal Palace and Roy Hodgson. Where are you going this week?
Crystal Palace and Roy Hodgson. Shocks to the surprise of no one. I always kind of assumed it was impossible to beat the Premier League. I come on the soccer pub starting about 2 months ago. Can't find a winner. Stumble into Crystal Palace, and honestly, this is a little bit of a dicey situation because Everton went in last week taking on the miserable form Fulham, and Fulham got right against Everton. It was an embarrassing result for Everton. honestly. And Crystal Palace, of course, running hot. The market finally starting to warm up to them in terms of just these opening prices being, tilted in their favor. And, as you know, from when we handicap American football, I love the buy low, sell high spots. And this is pretty obviously as high as you're going to ever see Crystal Palace and as low as you're ever going to see Everton. So this is a decent spot, I think, for Everton. And the market has agreed as you see the number for Crystal Palace drifting. However, if it's not broke, don't fix it, Jay. I'm going back to the well. I think Palace's attack is so dynamic. And honestly, the rate at which Everton gives up goals on the road is staggering. Palace should be able to just absolutely pour it on in this one. If Palace let a couple of embarrassing two equalizers or something like that, then I'm going to be pretty bummed. But realistically, I think this could get away from Everton. This could be a 2-1, 3-1, 4-1 type of event. I still in the back of my head am in awe that Palace put up 5 on Leeds 2 times, 2 matches ago. And I think realistically, Everton and Leeds to me power rated about the same. So Palace can get the better of these guys. Let's get some goals in the back of the net, boys, and Eagles continue their hot run.
Unbelievable. Yeah, for you and Crystal Palace. Yesterday, I was on the Fantasy Football Happy Hour, and Matthew Berry's talking about Crystal Palace as well, because Josh Paris, who's an owner of Crystal Palace, so he's going to provide the Commanders. We've got Drew Dinsick and Matthew Berry talking about Crystal Palace. What a world we're living in. But yeah, they're if it's not broke, don't fix it. And you've aligned yourself with this team. They don't play the best football in the world, but hopefully they can eke out another result under Roy Hodgson. I'm also going with a team outside of the vaunted top 6, and that's Brentford. I know Janusz likes Aston Villa. I like Brentford in this spot. Home to the Villains. I think it runs out here for my good friend Unai Emery. The Villains, it's been well chronicled that they've had a pretty easy run of opponents. Admittedly, that was a very impressive win over Newcastle, albeit at home, and they're on the road this time. I just don't quite believe in this Aston Villa team to the extent of their recent form. You look at expected goals right now. So Aston Villa are 7 points clear of Brentford in the table, having played the same amount of games. By expected goals, expected points, that should be flipped around the other way. So the Villains have been getting a little bit lucky. Brentford have been getting unlucky. Brentford coming off 2 losses, but both of those losses against Wolves and against Newcastle, Brentford should have won relatively comfortably on expected goals. So I believe in the Bees, and I believe that they will take care of business against Aston Villa this weekend and continue a little push towards the top 6 at Aston Villa's expense. So that's what I've got. Anything else on tap for you tonight, Drew?
I love it, though. Killer bees on the swarm. A little revenge from the 4-0 beating they took last time they went against these guys. I was looking at the past results, and that one kind of surprised me. I was like, I definitely didn't remember that. Only other thing on tap for me tonight, I got me some Warriors. Sorry, Jay. I think the Warriors take care of the Kings. And, it feels sacrilegious because yesterday was such an incredible day in the NBA with Mike Brown getting his well-deserved coach of the year. And the results went my way. But I tell you what, who's not very good on the road and extremely good at home? Speaking of home away, the Golden State Warriors. I think this is going to be an offensive explosion for that team, and I think they can basically run away with this one. So laid it with the Dubs. Only thing in action for me tonight.
Like it, yeah. My only bet the past 12 hours or so, I heavily bet on the Cavs to win the series against the Knicks at -115. I think they're the better team by margin, and I don't think the Knicks have anything they can do on offense against this Cavs defense. Randall and Brunson been very inefficient, and the Cavs are hunting Jalen Brunson on every single possession when he is on defense. And I think they figured stuff out having Karis LeVert in there as the 5th guy, because LeVert can actually do stuff off the dribble to punish Brunson. Brunson can't hide on him as much. So I think the Cavs figuring that out early, going away from Osman and Okoro. I think the Cavs are going to roll in this series and win in 6 or win in 7. Either way, they're going to win. -115 is my bet there. All right. Don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll be back tomorrow.